Destination Euro, the morning programme. I'm overjoyed to welcome George Kingsnorth. Good to see you, George. Listen, you guys, watch this if you would. We'll show it to them first, George.
Absolutely, why not?
Oh, Andrew needs a little more time.
A little bit more time.
Wow, wasn't I going fine there? But Andrew, he raised the directorial finger.
Absolutely.
And said, you're too quick.
Too quick.
Off the mark, yes. Anyway, we wouldn't have done that in the BBC, George.
Probably not.
Yeah,
Probably not. That's the word that you told Andrew not to say.
Ah, yes, probably not. Yeah.
Which means we probably would.
One of the lovely things about being as old as I am, you're able to say things to people and give them guidance.
Absolutely.
Without offending them,
Yeah.
because they first of all got to battle their way through half of your lifetime.
Yes, I
to
know.
even reach your age. You know, that's the
way
whole
it
thing.
goes.
How are we looking, Andrew? We're there. We're going to see this now.
Camera lenses are made up of a range of convex and concave lens elements designed to function in a more complex way than a single lens can. If you look through the single lens of a magnifying glass, you need to move it back and forth to bring the object you are looking at into focus. You'll also notice that the magnified image is not evenly spread across the entire lens, with a lot of distortion around the edges. If you bring the magnifying glass close to your eye, everything will be blurred. By moving your head and the magnifying glass together, closer to the object, it will eventually come into focus. At the point where everything is in focus, you have reached the focal point based on the distance from the magnifying glass is away from your eye. If you move the magnifying glass away from your eye, what is happening to the image of the object through the magnifying glass as you move away? You will notice that objects close by that were almost in focus start to look as though they are moving closer, but also becoming more blurred. You'll also notice that there is less visible across the magnifying glass. The magnifying glass is a convex lens. A convex lens converges light rays passing through it into a single focal point. The distance from the centre of the lens to the point is called the focal length. A concave lens does the opposite by spreading the light rays outwards. The combination of convex and concave lenses, called a compound lens, helps to correct the artifacts seen through using a single convex lens. The arrangement of lenses helps to focus the image across the entire sensor plane inside the camera. The size of the lens is also important. Bigger lenses gather more light, so the circumference of the lens can be considered as an aperture. Your eye has an iris that controls the amount of light passing through it. This is achieved through closing or opening the iris. Camera lenses are designed with a similar feature. On older film cameras, the iris or aperture was adjusted by a ring on the lens. The markings were called f-stops. The smaller the number, the more light comes through the lens. The higher the number, less light passes through. If you look at a distant object and keep it out of focus, then squint, you will notice that the object comes into focus. This is called depth of field. With a smaller aperture, more objects come into focus in front and behind the object of interest. With a larger aperture, this distance is decreased.
You were privileged there to have a 3-minute master class on the elements of photography, going from lens to iris to depth of field to shutter speed, aperture.
Yeah, this is just the lens.
Ah, the lens and the lens alone.
Just the lens alone.
Through which you view the world of your magnificence and good. It's
and we do explore that part. We're actually comparing the actual mechanical lens of a camera to your own eye.
Wow.
And exploring, the lenses that way.
Does it ever fascinate you that from the time when a pinprick was put in a box and light allowed in to fall on a sensitive surface, to go from that to the most modern digital camera in the world today, single lens reflex camera?
Well, when I started,
what was the progression?
What was the progression? Well, the first thing was trying to get an image to be fixed so you actually had a solid image,
yes,
which occurred in 1826. And then around about 1839, Fox Talbot came up with his system which was like a very similar to the negative version that we had, where you produced a negative and then made a contact print of that, and that was on sheets. But by the 1870s, 1878 time, when Muybridge was recording the horse's hooves lifting off the ground with a sequence of 24 cameras, the film speeds of those cameras were very similar to what we're used to today. So
500 for the second?
500 for the second, 500 ASA, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they had some pretty good shutter speeds. Now, when I started doing photography back in the late 70s, digital SLR, well, single lens reflex was the camera that I had a chance to use. That was a film camera.
And we never thought we would move to digital.
No, because for nearly 100 years, from 1898 right through to now, you've basically had 35mm film.
Yes.
Or some kind of roll film.
Yeah.
So we've had film for a good long time, and it was fairly flexible. It's fairly durable. I recently got a Nikon camera, old film camera from 1967, and put a roll of film through it. And again, it's just a mechanical camera, didn't need batteries. You had a shutter speed and an iris, f-stops. The ISO was fixed for that particular roll of film that you put through. So if you put 100 ISO through, that stayed the same. So you were reasonably limited to what you could actually do when you were taking the photograph.
And interestingly, in those days, not early days, it's only 20 years ago. Interestingly, then we were about the business of creating a hard copy.
Yes.
Something you could hold, look at, lift, put in your pocket.
Absolutely.
Now that's gone.
Yeah.
And the iconic image that we all remember was from Ektachrome of the lady of Afghanistan or Pakistan with the beautiful eyes looking at you. Yeah. This was the zenith of possibility, of qualitative possibility.
Absolutely.
Couldn't get any better.
Well, I mean, the photographer, there was a craft that you had to learn. There were all kinds of, even if you'd taken the photograph, the processing could go wrong. You know, so you had to learn your craft and how to, process that film and print it. And you only got, when you were printing, it could take you nearly a day just to get the right print coming off. Whereas with the digital age, everything's done very, very rapidly. Now, thankfully, with the likes of Photoshop, you can still manipulate the image and work on it and develop that craft. Which
You interestingly say thankfully.
I think,
Does that, what we're talking about, not introduce, it doesn't, obviously, but please lay down the parameters for us. An unacceptable artificiality.
Right.
When is it acceptable and when is it not acceptable?
Well, that's very debatable, unfortunately, because, like, for example, a couple of weeks ago, there was a photograph taken in a lady's shop of a dress. And when it went on the internet, people said, oh, it's a white dress with gold banding around it. And it was just taken maybe on a mobile phone. But then other people said, well, actually, no, it's a blue dress with a black banding around it. And it actually turned out to be a blue dress with black. But in certain lighting conditions and with certain exposure settings on the camera, you can make black look like gold and you can make blue look like white. We're here in the studio. We've got a lot of light coming down on us, which is slightly orange. Because it's kind of more of a tungsten, it's actually fluorescent light, which is probably slightly green. From the window coming in, we've got slightly blue light. Now, if we're used to this idea that if you look at white under daylight, there is a slight blue tinge, okay?
Yes.
So this is how people then saw that particular image. And I think that was actually fascinating. It just went viral. But there was no discussion of whether it was an acceptable image. It was actually overexposed, which gave the blue dress the slightly white sort of Daz look, if you like. And the gold braiding, which is actually, I mean, this that I'm wearing here under certain lighting conditions would actually look like gold and not black. And that's just the way that, you know, but if you understand that process, I think that you can then manipulate the image in whichever way you want it to go. And that's where the creativity comes in with the likes of Photoshop, is that you can make an image that, you know, maybe a little bit boring, suddenly zing in some way.
Sort of thing that we used to use filters to do.
Yes, absolutely.
So Photoshop becomes the filter, if you like.
Yeah, well, actually, if you take, I took a photograph of you not so long ago using my digital SLR. I took a color photograph of it. I hadn't actually white balanced properly, so the camera was slightly blue, in the image was slightly blue.
Yes.
But I was going to turn it into a black and white image. And again, in Photoshop, as opposed to starting off with a black and white image, using the color allowed me to use the filters, the cyan, yellow, magenta, and black, to mess around with whichever filter I wanted to create the best contrasting black and white image. So again, that's where the likes of Photoshop and the digital age, in the post-production side of things, you can create a wonderful image, and you know, it's nice to produce a nice black and white image.
Absolutely. Now, I think I want to tell people we're with George Kingsnorth of Gullion Media and U3.TV, and that's YOU, TREE,
Yep.
TV, U3.TV, and this is the course you've just been hearing about, the images you've just been seeing in a video output. These are available from U3 media.tv, U3.TV.
U3.TV. The course that you've just seen that video for, that's a kind of promotional video that we've set up. We're still working on that course. We hope to have that finished by the end of next week, and that will be available through udemy.com.
Udemy.com.
And it's called The Anatomy of Digital Photography.
Well, you see, it's huge. I really recommend to you this man's operation, because what he's doing for the first time here in this part of the world is it's a kind of Silicon Valley concept. You're here creating new technology. You're using it to the very limits of its capacity and capability. And essentially, and you've touched on this already, George, essentially you must find out about and learn about the theory, that which lies behind the image.
Yeah, but I think it's very important to actually demonstrate the practical aspect of it so that you understand why the theory is actually important.
Yes.
Quite often you can have this very, very theoretical or very, very practical, but without the two meshed together,
yes,
you know, it becomes very difficult to do the practical properly because you don't understand why the process is.
You see, I'm the living personification of the truth of that.
Yeah.
I am a good photographer. I am not a brilliant photographer. The difference between, and you've seen my work, the difference between the two is that I was so busy with the practical, I didn't take the time to perfect the theory. And therefore I remain good and not brilliant.
Yeah.
Learn the lesson.
Well, I think that's an important aspect. If you're passionate about something and you want to, we tend to think we're in a kind of throwaway society, and yet there's a lot of effort and energy goes into producing, especially these courses, and even the programs that are created to show the kind of videos that we're doing, the online materials. I'm not alone in the little company that we're working on. My brother Michael, based in London, he's an IT person. He worked for the BBC doing their archive material in London. He's recently worked for the University of Central London, again doing sort of the IT. His side of the company is that we're going to develop a system where we can archive people's material so that they still have their own copyright. Because in the age that we now live, quite often you can upload something, your images that are precious to you, and suddenly you no longer own the rights to that material. So what we're looking at is open source technology. We want people to feel that they can still retain ownership of their materials. We're also offering, my brother's offering emails that are private. Because the way that our privacy is being taken away from us, which is interesting because we're talking about photography earlier on.
Yes.
And we have to be careful how the photographs and images that we take are actually used, because we tend to feed them onto Facebook and the likes.
We do.
And the world can see that. And that material that gets taken can actually be used for advertising purposes without your permission.
My goodness.
Okay? And the words that you say online can quite often be done that way. Now, we're dealing with a lot of musicians and video makers and artists, and they want to store their material safely. So my brother Michael is offering a service through Prairie Solutions where he can store this material for them so that they still retain their ownership of some of the work they put a lot of effort and hard work into.
But I think you're the clearinghouse for it, as far as the punter out there is concerned.
Yep.
Here, you're the man. Gullion Media up there in Drummondtee.
Yep.
You're there. You're able to look after the publishing needs of people.
Absolutely.
The education needs of people in the area that we're talking about, of filmmaking, of photography, of documentary making. You're there to do that. It's a worldwide correspondence course system, and it's growing all the time.
Yeah.
So the convenient place for people to get involved is Gullion Media.
Or utree.tv.
utree.tv. YOUTREE. utree.tv.
And you'll also find it on Facebook. We have a utree.tv Facebook page as well. So we're promoting a lot of our stuff through that.
Excellent. Great man to publish your stuff. You've done my book. This is the man. I've put the printing of it in abeyance for the moment. For all sorts of very good reasons.
Yes, yeah.
Africa is a melting pot of violence in my part of Africa at the moment.
Yeah.
But we're ready to go, aren't we, with it?
We're close to it, yeah.
We're close to it there with the book.
And there's no. I think again, we've been working on the project for about a year now.
Yeah.
And I think the book has benefited from that length of time. We live in an age that tries to get everything done instantly. It's a rush to get things done. And if you rush into things, then things aren't done properly at times. Things can get missed. But I think what's been really nice about working on your project is that we've had time to let it, simmer through and get the best flavors out of it.
Yeah. And some of the flavors folk can get on the little promo of it.
Yes.
And there's a little mini documentary about my book. And it's you simply Google or go to YouTube and put in Caritas et Amor promo, and that will give you the book. And you will see the style of George. George has the power of the whispered roar. That's what I describe it as. This man walks and talks very gently and moves very gently in all that he does. And I think a good example of that is the promo for my book on YouTube, Caritas et Amor promo. I encourage you to have a look at it. You'll come back to me again before I disappear.
Yes, very much so, yeah.
It'd be good to do that. But thanks for coming today.
No problem, Ron.
And we remind people, utree.tv. utree.tv. And that's YOUTREE. George Kingsnorth, go well.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.